Are you a business owner stuck in fear, doubt, and worry about what the marketplace will look like in the future? Then this show is for you. Strap on your seatbelt and get ready to disrupt and innovate. Here's your host, Lisa Levy.
Today, I'm honored to welcome Dr. Kevin Gazzara. He is the CEO of Magna Leadership Solutions. He's a management and leadership expert, positive intelligence executive coach, and a professor at 5 universities. Kevin spent 18 years at Intel leading programs, products, and leadership development, and he is now the co-author of The Leader of Oz and Ready, Set, Get Hired. His research on creating flow helps leaders boost motivation and engagement. And I'm so excited to have this conversation today. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Lisa, thanks so much for sharing me with your listeners and viewers. I appreciate that.
I am thrilled to have this conversation because any conversation we have that actually truly impacts our leaders is meaningful to the audience because they are building and growing their businesses. And I would love for you to explain what you're doing today and why it's so important now.
Well, I spent 30 years in industry. My last 18 years before I left, I spent at Intel, did a lot of different jobs there as a product manager, program manager, as a GM for them. But the last 10 years, I was fortunate enough, I managed Intel University, and I managed Intel's management and leadership development programs for the world. A big job, a fantastic job. And I think the one thing for me was having the ability to make change and impact managers' lives. We used to, and just to give you an idea of the scale, we used to do 2,500 managers and leaders each year in 10 different countries. So when I retired from Intel in 2007, we had just finished training our 40,000th manager. So I got pretty good at developing and delivering management leadership programs. I had a personal goal. I wanted to retire at 50. I mean, I call it retirement. My wife will not call it retirement, but I really wanted to go and give back, to work with organizations for kind of my next phase of life that, didn't have $10 million budgets and really help them, the small and medium organizations grow and grow their leadership. And so I left in 2007. I took 2 of my colleagues with me, Dr. Ali Lakhani and Marlene Lundy, and we started up a firm called Magna Leadership Solutions. And it's been 18 years. Every year has been better than the last. And I think the big thing of kind of what I'm doing is I'm really trying to help organizations and leaders that really do have it inside themselves to be great, and giving them the necessary tools, either through our Leading Forward Academy program, which is a 6-month leadership program, or doing executive coaching. I get an opportunity to coach a lot of the executives around the world, as well as many in the Phoenix area where I'm located.
So absolutely fabulous. And the power of having training and development programs complemented by executive coaching, it's a 1-2 punch, and it gives the ability to change organizations holistically. When you're working with teams, talk a little bit about the approach and how you engage and interact with them.
Well, it starts from the top. We've tried lots of different approaches. What we found is if you can get the senior management to buy in and role model the type of behaviors and processes and tools that you want, then you can be pretty successful at getting it to roll down in the organization. We've had 1 or 2 organizations that senior management has hired us to go and fix their middle and first line managers, but they are not emulating the kind of behaviors. And although we can give them some tools to make it better, it's really difficult when the middle and first line managers are doing the right thing, taking the right approach, taking what everyone would call a servant leadership kind of model. And the top leaders are completely authoritarian, tops down, don't listen, and so forth. So if you can get the senior management to buy in and people can look up to them, you can really make amazing change. You can really shift cultures. And we've done this with dozens of companies where we're able to make that cultural shift. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a continuous process and a continuous learning process. And if you can do it, it's a win-win for everybody, both management as well as the individuals. And I think the big thing is the way we can tell is they're attracting better people, and more importantly, they're retaining their people, right? So we've worked with some organizations that have had sometimes even more than 100% turnover. And that is just a nightmare from a cost perspective as well as a disruptive perspective. And although we can't get it to zero, we can usually cut it by 50 or
And how do you help motivate those teams that are trying so hard in a place where the tone at the top is not in their best interest?
well, what we try to do is give them sufficient tools to influence up. And, some of the foundations of our leadership program is starting from a perspective of I'm the problem or I'm contributing to the problem. You want to start there. So if you're having problems with people at the top, you want to start with, I'm the problem or I'm contributing to the problem. What can I do differently to influence change? And sometimes it's very, very difficult. Sometimes it's impossible. But what we usually find is you're more of an influence, particularly if you're a well-respected middle manager than you would expect. So it's really role modeling that, and it's giving the middle managers and the first line managers sufficient tools to act as a manager and a leader as coach, right? So they need to coach up in a way that's viewed positively, not usurping kind of the leadership above you. And I think that another foundational piece that we usually say is that a good leader, even when you're managing up, always allows the other person to look or be successful when you're having that conversation. You never want to embarrass them. You never want to put them on the spot where it would make them look bad. You always want to allow them to feel like they have some degree of control. And if you can do that, that's going to raise how people view you as a leader. And it's also going to elevate them as well.
And what you're describing in this being in a leader in the middle and being and learning how to coach up, that is an art form. And when people really master it, right? Obviously, it's skills that we can learn, but those who master it are wizards and can do the most amazing things inside of a business because the challenges that may exist above them can magically disappear when the idea is positioned in such a way that that person above is not threatened, may actually get some of the acknowledgement and credit for allowing their teams to do these things. Not that they're responsible for the outcomes, but they've given the autonomy to let those things sort of happen.
Mhm.
And it can shift culture in a way that otherwise that authoritarian personality at the top can be so demoralizing to everybody underneath. So learning how to play that part in the middle and effectively coach up is a really powerful skill set. And it translates over time as you kind of go through career journey and now you're a CEO and you're dealing with a board of directors,
Yes,
right?
100%. And it's something that doesn't happen overnight. Leadership is not a spectator sport. You just have to practice it, and you also have to be willing to get it wrong sometimes, and make those stumbles. And if you can do that, generally, almost always, you're always going to see that progression forward.
Let's talk a little bit about the safety to be wrong. In my world, I talk about everything being an experiment. We never know exactly what the business outcome is going to be. We know what we'd like it to be. But if we got it right every single time, I don't think there'd be any fun in that. It's when things go wrong that sometimes we have the greatest then leaps forward. But people are afraid of failure. There's mindsets that would talk about, failing costs money, right? There are these challenges to that. How do you position it's okay to be wrong some of the time?
Well, you want failure, right? Because, I will ask executives, tell me about a time where you really learned the most, where you really advanced the furthest. And 100% of the time it's through a failure, right? What they've learned and so forth. So people want to make that advance. The key is that you don't want the failure to be fatal, right? And I am a big proponent of doing simulations. At Intel, we used to do a lot of different simulations. I've developed a bunch of simulations, leadership simulations that we use with Magna Leadership. And the key is to allow that failure to happen in what I would call a safe space where it really doesn't cost anything, and then do a reflection of how that failure that just happened in the simulation actually uh, replicates what's happening in the company. And if you can get the managers to make that that correlation, then they can take that learning and then they can go and apply it. And when they apply it, that it may not be perfect, but there's a good probability that it's not fatal.
And that's a really important point. Failing in a place that's safe, where you're not risking everything, right? You're doing it in that simulation mindset. I'll talk about that as a conference room prototype, right? Things that don't necessarily cost anything more than the time invested in the thought experiment. R&D is a different thing entirely. That's a different model to play with. Can you share with us a story, a team, a leader that you took on a journey that may have had some challenges along the way, but ultimately had that change that was so impactful to their career and their company?
But yeah, I'll use one that's probably a little unusual for people to hear. So we worked with a very large medical company out of Washington, D.C. They had horrendous turnover, and they brought us in. And the leader that we're working with, the first time I had met him, he said, We're going to bring you in. We've tried a bunch of different things, and nothing has worked. And to get people trained, it takes about 18 months to get them trained to do what we want to do in this medical field. But we're losing most of the people at 9 months. So we're just restarting over and over and over again. Their turnover was, I want to say like 32, 33%. So it was relatively high and relatively high paid people. So it was causing problems for two reasons. One, they had to rehire and retrain people, but more importantly, what they had is they had this gigantic backup of records that had to be analyzed for the doctors, that they were way, way behind, right? So they had this two for so they brought us in. The gentleman's name was Leroy. Leroy just said, "Hey, we've seen some of the stuff that you've done or heard about some of the stuff that you've done. We've brought you in. We don't think this is going to work, but we don't think you're going to F up it any worse." So I said, "Well, thank you for that confidence, and then we went through our process using one of our tools called the Task Quotient, which is a tool that really identifies the types of tasks, the mixture of the types of tasks that you love to do, and it relates it to the concept of flow. And what we found was two things happened. The first thing is that the leader, when he went through it, he recognized that a lot of the stuff, or most of the stuff that he was doing, he had a imbalance. He was much more of a routine kind of guy. There's three tasks we do: routine, troubleshooting, and project work. He was much more of a kind of a routine and a project work, and he was not really a good troubleshooter. So in the moment where there was lots and lots of turmoil, he did not do a good job. So that was the first thing. That was his aha. And the second thing he recognized is he really did much, much better dealing with the processes than the people. So that was the first thing. And the first, this is a day and a half session that we had done. The first day he walked in, he said, "Hey, don't pay any attention to Bill, because we're getting ready to fire him because he's just not working out." And I said, "Okay, well, we're going to go through the whole process and see how things turn out for Bill." And we went through the TQ, the Task Quotient process. And what we recognized is Bill was severely misplaced. They had him doing all the processes and none of the people, and his strength was around people. And that's what really fed him. So we rebalanced all of the tasks, not reorganized, and brought everybody together. And what we found out was about 3 months later, Leroy self-selected and said, "Hey, I'm going to move into another part of the business where I get to do more project kind of work and focus on the processes instead of having to manage these, 30 people that he had." And Bill became the man. So the guy that they said, don't pay any attention to him, because that was Leroy's perspective.
Yeah.
And we said, "Hey, look, we're not going to go in here with a bias. Let's just see how it works out. And it may tell us the same thing that you found out. We may find out something different." So I think that was truly a win-win. Bill was happy. Leroy was happy, even though he had to kind of step out of the position, but he understood the reason why.
Mhm.
And we were able to cut their turnover. So we couldn't get it to zero, but we went from like 33 to 16 or 17, something like that. Happy client. Everybody was happy. But it was taking the time to run through the simulation in a safe environment so that they could do that rebalance.
That is a fabulous story. There are so many pieces that it's a juicy story with all sorts of fabulous elements in it. So understanding through the flow and understanding and right person, right role.
Hmm.
It's such a simple concept. And I know that in every business and team, so we talk about this a lot, but I don't know that we action it as often as we really should. And what a beautiful story where you have two individuals who so very clearly were in the exact wrong role. I mean, they were like diametrically opposed to where they should have been. And just having the ability to leverage and use task quotient to understand that you had a people person in a process role and a process person in a people role, it's not surprising that switching those things changed, I'm sure, morale. One thing you may not have mentioned overall, right? But team
Yes.
productivity, performance, and to cut attrition in half by 50% is the outcome of all of those changes and people actually doing things that give them meaning and make them feel valued for what they're doing. That's like one of those perfect stories. Kevin, you had all the pieces. You've mentioned a couple of times about attrition and turnover and not getting it to zero. Zero is an unattainable goal, I think, for attrition, and I think it should be. Do you think that a little healthy, attrition is good for a business?
Well, I was working at Intel, we used to have what we called desirable and undesirable turnover, right? And there was always a percentage. I don't remember what the exact percentage is, but it's single digits, right? So it's probably in the 0 to 4 or 5 range, maybe 6%. Depends on how good you do hiring, right? If you hire the right people, the percentage is going to be much, much lower. One of the things that we found out is that most organizations don't do a great job hiring the right people, because what they do is they hire for skill instead of hiring for talent, right? So you want to hire for talent, and you want to hire for fit, right? That's I think the biggest thing. Do you fit the culture of that you're coming into? Because you can train for the skills. I'm not saying I'm not saying hire unskilled people. I'm saying hire people that have the potential to learn, but you can more easily teach them the skills than trying to get them to change their perspective on cultural values.
Absolutely. I was having a random conversation with a CEO here in town, and his team was a little flummoxed. They had a director of finance who was getting ready to leave the organization to go somewhere else to become and step into for her first time a CFO role.
Hmm.
And everybody was just devastated by this. And the CEO was going, no, this is fantastic. We've done what we can for her here. She's had a fantastic career. We
Hmm.
don't have this opening. And in the organization this size, she's not ready for it. She's going to go somewhere where she is ready for the CFO role. It is the right fit. And he
Hmm.
says, and in 5 years, when we're ready to hire another CFO, guess what? We're going to call her up and see if she's ready to make another step up in her career journey. Right, there's the right fit, the right timing, and I loved that story because people don't think 3 moves down the path, but
Hmm.
when you do, sometimes a little turnover is a really good thing.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry, I don't know where that story just came from, but it popped into my head, so I thought I'd share
Yeah.
it. When you're talking about hiring for talent and fit, it's really important that, right, it is not just about skills and capabilities. Job descriptions, I think, do a disservice to the hiring process and even coaching and developing employees. And so the idea that you're looking for that talent and that fit and that there's an opportunity to upskill along the way is really important for leaders to remember.
Hmm.
Kevin, you've taken us on a great journey today. If you have piqued the interest and curiosity from members of the audience and they want to learn more, where do they go?
Well, there's lots of ways to connect with me. So you can send me an email to Kevin at Magna Leadership, Magna leadership.com. You can go to the website, the Magna Leadership website. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Kevin Gazzara on LinkedIn. So there's lots of different ways to connect with me. And if you send me an email and you want to have more of a discussion, the thing that I'll promise you is I don't do sales. I'm not doing any sales pitches, right? That if you have a challenge, hey, I'd like to understand how you handled that medical company and to see if we could do something like that. I'll be glad to walk you through what we did. And if it seems like a good fit and I can help, fantastic. And if it doesn't, and you want to kind of DIY it, do it on your own. I'll give you the best tools I've got, and then you can give it a shot. But I really do enjoy trying to help other organizations to be incredibly successful and help people really discover, their leadership capabilities by giving them kind of the right tools and approaches.
And on that topic, you have a gift for the audience. We'll have a link in the show notes to an assessment. What's the assessment for?
So you're going to get a link for the task quotient assessment. That's the assessment I described that we use for this medical company. And what it will do, so it's free. So I've created a free version just for the show. And what it'll do is you'll answer 15 questions and you'll get your report instantaneously. And what it'll do is it'll identify your ideal balance of task types. There's 3 tasks that we do. We talked about routine troubleshooting project. And what I found out through all my doctoral research quantitatively is that each one of us, there's 496 discrete mixtures. Each one of us has a specific one. And if you can structure your day and week so you're getting more of the types of tasks that you do, we know that it does a few things. It raises productivity. It'll raise your engagement and motivation. And we just did a more recent research, and it also will give you a higher degree feel of empowerment, feeling like you really have control. And it shouldn't take more than about 5 minutes to finish, and you'll get your report instantaneously. If you want to expand upon that, you have contact for me, and I'll be glad to walk you through any more details.
Thank you so much for that generous give. And audience today, Dr. Kevin Gazzara has taken us on a fantastic journey through the impact and what he learned with his time at Intel, but how he's switched that around to build something that we can build and great teams and great companies in the smaller business market, working with leadership teams, working as an executive coach. His group is making sure that we start at the top and we build cultures that are based on doing the right things and having the ability so that by understanding task quotients, you have people in the right roles doing the right types of work, so that if you are a routine-oriented individual, the tasks that you are given are mostly in that space. Or if you should be in the troubleshooting space or the project space, getting to that space where you're doing the majority of your work in that space where you get your best motivation and your own personal sense of accomplishment drives great teams. Kevin, thank you so much for being here, your generous offer with the task quotient. I'm hoping that one of the outcomes says that I should be on a beach drinking margaritas, that's my best place to be. But I'll let you know when I take the assessment a little bit later. Audience members, you know my rules. Don't get left behind. Join me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Disrupt and Innovate. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show.